I played a lot of Pokemon fan games in 2025, and in this video, I'll be ranking them. But first, I need to make it clear that this will be a mostly opinionated list. While projects may get higher placements due to their quality level, my overall enjoyment of the content provided is what matters the most. Though, let's not waste any more time. The double S tier will be for my absolute favorite games this year. They impressed me in every department, leaving me with almost nothing to complain about. In the regular S tier, you'll find those I enjoyed to a heavy extent, though had a few nitpicks or smaller issues, preventing them from reaching the tier above. A will be for games I had fun with, yet lacked in certain areas, or just didn't leave me speechless. The B tier will contain projects that either felt extremely average, or were just a mixed bag of enjoyability. C tier is for those I had a really hard time liking, yet could still see or understand how others could. And finally, the D tier is home to projects I found almost nothing to enjoy about. Going in alphabetical order, we first have Pokemon Awakening. Rather than playing as a trainer collecting 8 gym badges, you'll embark on a journey in search of your village's lost treasures before they fall into the wrong hands. This game has a really big world for you to explore that, alongside the huge Pokemon variety, made for a very fun team building and gameplay experience. I will admit that the story didn't really pique my interest, though it was still pretty easy to progress through thanks to a keybind that always tells you where to go next, and a lot of less important dialogue being optional. Despite my opinions of the writing, its fun Pokemon battles, huge region to explore, and quality of life features easily earn Awakening a spot in the S tier. Though not even a few minutes into the video, I already get to talk about one of my favorite fan games this year. When it comes to graphics, Pokemon Berilo does not pull any punches. Each step of your adventure will be through incredibly detailed and well-constructed routes, while the battle scenes are assembled using heavily customized backgrounds. Even the story is conveyed through character art depicting their emotions, with a handful of animated cutscenes. Though a pretty game isn't automatically a good one, which is why I'm pleased to add that Berilo also features a strong cast of new Pokemon and regional forms, all of whom are super easy to train thanks to a nice amount of quality of life, including the EXP All. While the current version is only about 10 hours long, what I played is very much that of a game that belongs in the double S tier. Moving on, we have Pokemon Bioterror. Upon first playing this game, I did have a feeling it was going to be good, just not one that would leave a strong impression on me. But, to my surprise, it quickly became one of my favorite fan games this year. The plot is told very well, and the world around you is nicely constructed. Not to mention, there's a hint of environmental storytelling to bring its region even further to life. Though where Bioterror truly excels is with its gameplay. From the start of your journey, you'll encounter a plethora of regional forms, and even a few original species, both of which are very easy to train with the heavy amount of quality of life and game customization options. While Bioterror only has about 15 hours of content with 4 gyms, I still had an amazing time, leaving me with no doubts over putting it in the S tier. Now, Pokemon Comet, I'm gonna be honest and say that I have almost identical opinions of this game as I did the last. The world is very pretty, the dozens of regional forms are fun to use, and a good amount of anti-grind features are provided to you. The only difference in opinion I have is that I enjoyed Bioterror's story slightly more, yet found Comet to be a bit stronger with its art style consistency. Either way, they're both great games, and despite only going up to the 3rd gym, Comet has a lot of content that'll even take you to the late level 40s. Up next is Pokemon Compact. This game introduces a really interesting gimmick of taking every single mainline region and downsizing them into much shorter, battle-focused experiences. Pokemon level up after each battle, with new team members instantly scaling to your own, alongside every center having a shop filled with all sorts of items you would need to enhance them. Although the execution of the concept is very good, it's not one I was a diehard fan of, personally preferring bigger regions with a stronger focus on the adventure. That, alongside Kanto being the only current option, Compact will be going into the B tier. It was a game I felt very meh about, though certainly has a bright future ahead of it as the creator continues to adapt to other regions. Pokemon Decay, another fan game with a heavy focus on regional forms. Although, I'll admit, this one didn't really wow me as much as the previous three. The story introduces a disaster that merged the first four regions together before taking us through a plot very reminiscent of those older games. The new region isn't badly designed in any way, though the maps that use mostly fire red tiles feel a bit lacking in detail and diversity. And while the Delta Pokemon definitely spiced up the gameplay, I can't say many of them stood out to me more than those in most other fan projects I played this year. With that said, I don't have any major complaints either. It's still fun and very much a game that can be enjoyed, especially if you're a fan of regional variants or the simplistic storytelling of the older Pokemon titles. Fire Ash. With the ability to travel across the first 8 regions from the perspective of Ash Ketchum, it's a game I've heard quite a bit of praise for over the last few years. Though, finally trying it after an update earlier in 2025, I was disappointed, but also kind of confused. If I had to put it simply, Fire Ash is probably the most quantity over quality fan game I think I've ever played. Every map looks like it was thrown together as quick as possible, and each moment that's supposed to reflect Ash's journey felt shortened to the furthest extent. The only major redeeming aspect I could consider for this game is the ability to travel through 8 regions. Although every map in the game using the fire red tile set quickly made these additional regions feel very identical to another. I obviously don't blame anyone for liking or even loving it, especially considering it's the only game of its kind, but for me personally, I just can't see myself putting it anywhere above the D tier. Pokemon Flux. This fan game surpassed almost every expectation I had for it. The roster of new Pokemon was so fun to use while also looking absolutely incredible. The region had a very exploration-focused design, with each route feeling like its own miniature wild area, and even the story went above the standard Game Freak level of depth I originally expected. Flux was already one of my favorite fan games after Episode 1, but this recent update has accelerated it even further up my list. It'll be going to the very front of the double S tier, and I highly suggest it to anyone who loves fan-made Pokemon. On to the next game, Hero Legacy. This one has a somewhat interesting opening, taking on the role of a trainer who has already completed multiple other Pokemon leagues. Though I can't say that plot point made a huge difference, as the structure of the adventure is still the same as any other, traveling across a new region to collect 8 gym badges. But since the new region introduced was actually well constructed, that wasn't something I was going to stop playing the game over. Where it really fell apart for me though was the story. It was made almost entirely of characters from the official games, who seemed to be written after the most basic versions of themselves. With the EXP and lower difficulty level, this game can be fun for more casual players, though for me personally, it will have to go into the C tier. HGSS Sevii Islands. Taking place after the events of Heart Gold and Soul Silver, you'll arrive on one island in pursuit of the remaining legendary beasts. But before you can make any real progress, Team Rocket appears, forcing you to shift your focus towards their attempted return. The big compliment I'll give to this game is that it has a lot of content. You have all 7 islands to explore, plus the entirety of Hoenn after completing the main story. Although, rather than kicking off the adventure with level 5 Pokemon, the game starts you around the mid-level 30s. This is something I was originally a bit mixed about, but I realized there was still a lot of room for me to grow alongside my team, thanks to the amount of content I mentioned earlier. With some extra surprises like Paradox Pokemon, I think HGSS Sevii can sit safely in the A tier. Halfway through the list, Pokemon Hollow Woods. Across the board, this game felt very consistent. The maps, story, visuals, none of them really blew me away, yet they all felt really good to play through and mimicked the 4th generation games extremely well. Though it did stand out in 2 ways, with around 80 new regional forms and a few gameplay customization options. As always, it was nice to have the EXP all, but I surprisingly enjoyed having my entire team healed after every battle. Overall, Hollow Woods is a good game that just didn't exceed my expectations, leaving me confident with it going into the A tier. If you're someone who adores the concept of a Pokemon game with a lot of content, then Hydro Bliss will probably be right up your alley, as this game doesn't have just one, but two massive regions. Each one has 18 gym leaders that can be challenged in any order. As cool as that sounds though, the lack of really any story quickly turned the game into somewhat of a boss rush. This wasn't something that bothered me too much, especially with how well designed the first region was, yet the second being almost entirely constructed using the fire red art style weighed down on my motivation very quickly. Like I said before, if the idea of almost endless battles and a huge variety of Pokemon to collect appeals to you, this is definitely a game you'll fall in love with. Though without any real story or structure to follow, I myself will be placing it into the B tier. Pokemon Jam Festival, a game where you decide vacation is too boring for you and instead take part in the festival trial across its original region. While the trial is admittedly just the shorter gym challenge, the journey through it was really fun. Each captain can be defeated in any order, and the routes were very well designed both physically and visually. The only aspect I could heavily criticize was that there were way too many encounters per area. This often resulted in having to spend more time than what should be necessary to find the Pokemon you wanted. Other than that, it's just a short and sweet adventure that I think can sit safely in the A tier. Up next, Miragea's Traveler. This game kind of came out of nowhere, yet it really surprised me with its original direction. Rather than collecting gym badges, you'll work for the Trainer Union, an organization that keeps the citizens of the region safe from both natural and antagonistic threats. I want to say that I really enjoyed the story. The plot is very simple for a while, but the characters have extremely fun and diverse personalities, and were a blast to interact with. Although the game's uniqueness doesn't end there, as instead of traveling through linear routes to reach the next town, you'll navigate much bigger maps that each feel like their own mini wild areas. There isn't too much to say about the Pokemon battles, though they're still pretty fun, and the encounter variety is quite strong. Altogether, Miragea's Traveler succeeds in delivering a very different kind of Pokemon experience without straying too far from the structure we're used to, so it will be going into the regular S tier. Pokemon Reunion. I finally tried this game after a massive update earlier this year, and I'm not gonna lie, I did not like it. The plot follows Red after returning from his journey, now faced with new threats appearing all over Kanto. Especially with the multiversal elements involved, it's a story that I think had a lot of potential, yet was held back by what I felt was the creator's priority to include as many iconic characters as possible, rather than, well, actually writing the story. I want to stress that it's not horrible, I just think it could have been a lot better. What truly threw me over the edge though was starting with level 80 Pokemon, scrapping almost any sense of progression. You can argue that it makes sense as you're playing as the region's champion, though I can't see how a plot point where you're forced to build a new team is too far-fetched for this game's story. It's also worth mentioning that a game I discussed earlier, where you also play as the champion, starts you with level 30 Pokemon, something that doesn't have any negative effects on the game's story or progression. The only redeeming quality I could consider for this game is that it is visually pleasing, but I don't think that's enough to keep it out of the C tier. On to another game I didn't really enjoy this year, Pokemon Realities. I think my main issue with this game is that it was way too quickly paced. The beginning does flow pretty well, but once you pick your starter, I was pretty much going from one gym to another every 30 minutes. I didn't feel like I was rushing through it either, there just wasn't much going on between each of them. Even disregarding the story, the balance isn't great either. Gyms, even from the start, have Pokemon that Mega Evolve, and despite there being 27 starters to choose from, picking any of the grass ones left me feeling extremely hard countered in the early game. I think it definitely has potential to improve, but at the moment, I just can't see myself putting it above the C tier. Up next is Pokemon Revival. Now, I have to admit, this game was almost omitted from the list due to its current length. Yet, I felt that everything it accomplished, even in its short demo, made it absolutely worthy of being here. But in Pokemon Revival, you'll take on the role of 6 different protagonists, each beginning the story with their own goals, before eventually uniting for an adventure that'll take you across the entire Pokemon world. Obviously, the content per each region won't match that of those in the official games, though there's still a lot to be done through various quests and an open world style of exploration. Not to mention, the story is pretty fun, being told through very high quality artwork. With Chapter 1 covering its story in Unova, and more coming very soon, Revival has a very bright future ahead of it, especially considering what I already played is easily worthy of the S tier. In the final 3, Pokemon Royal. As someone who is never a fan of the 8th generation games, I have to say this fan project does an incredible job of enhancing their respective region. The world is put together using Generation 5 inspired graphics, while also providing updates to each route. The story is mostly the same, yet introduces some new characters to help improve its more disappointing plot points. And most importantly, the gameplay is a lot better. Boss battles are no longer mind-numbingly easy, and you'll even be able to capture Pokemon from all 9 generations. Though the current version only takes you up to the 3rd gym, it definitely belongs in the S tier. Second to last is Pokemon Unity. Now, I feel a bit mixed about this game because on one hand, the story is actually quite interesting, and outside of a few small cases, the region is pretty well designed. Though, I was not a big fan of its main gimmick, where the Pokédex only features Pokemon with a singular type. The battles were still fun and well balanced, they just felt a little lackluster, having the entire concept of dual typings completely removed. It's a game I feel falls into the B tier for me, but if the single type gimmick doesn't bother you, then it's easily worthy of A tier. Closing things out with one of my favorite games this year, Pokemon Zirconium. My favorite aspect of this game is easily the exploration, as not only is the world extremely vast, you're also given 2 of them to navigate. The above ground, filled with trainers like yourself, and the underground, where Pokemon roam freely. Though to my surprise, Zirconium continues this level of consistency with its gameplay and story. The strong Pokemon variety is met with a very interesting gimmick, allowing you to modify the strength and resistances of a specific type. Combine that with the EXP and you've got yourself an incredible team building experience. While the story does follow the gym challenge formula, every important character has a place in the narrative, making battles against them way more memorable. This game has so many positives, and I honestly can't think of a single thing to complain about. It has almost everything I could ask for in a Pokemon game, leaving me confident over placing it into the double S tier. As I wrap up this video, it's important to remind everyone watching that this is an opinion-based tier list. While I feel it's necessary for me to be as honest as respectfully possible, please don't let my rankings of a game stop you from giving it a try or continuing to enjoy it. Either way, I hope you enjoyed this video, and be sure to subscribe for more Pokemon fan projects. Thank you to my channel members for their continuous support, and have a nice rest of your day.